Gators, and sports fans. Get all your Gator talk, news, analysis, and opinions on the Pod Up with Matthews in the Morning podcast. Find us on your favorite podcast platform or watch us on Facebook Live between 8 a.m. and 9 a.m. every weekday. Pod Up, because we are Gator fans. So say it's great to be a Florida Gator.
Good morning and welcome to a Monday edition of Pod Up with Matthews in the Morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios. Large enough to serve you, small enough to care. We appreciate you coming along for the ride today. It's a tough one for us. I'm not going to lie. Former teammate Aubrey Hill passes away at the age of 44. This one hit right at home. It's tough. So Chris Doering and I will talk a little bit about Aubrey Hill and college football later in the program. But first, we can go to the Titan MR hotline. And we're joined by Alison Posey, who is the first female sports director for over-the-air channels in the state of Florida. Good morning, Alison. How are you?
Good morning. I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, first off, let's go ahead and get to what happened Friday. Was it Thursday or Friday? I've lost track. But
Friday.
Very anticipated meeting for Florida high school athletics. Were you surprised at how it turned out?
No, I wasn't. Just from talking to coaches in the area, people that are on the different advisory committees that the FHSAA has, I wasn't surprised. I fully expected them to go with that August 24th start date. So no, I wasn't shocked. I did get a little bit nervous during the meeting, or not nervous, I guess, but just a little concerned that wouldn't happen. When some of the board members started speaking up and really tried to advocate for pushing it back, to listen to that sports medicine advisory committee, their recommendations to push it back. But they went with what I was told they would go with, and that was that August 24th start date, and here we are.
And so it's still a little confusing for a lot of people because not everybody is starting on the 24th. It kind of explain how that all works.
So what the proposal was, because Florida is such a diverse state. I mean, what is going on in the Panhandle to Central Florida to South Florida, it's completely different concerning COVID cases. So one of the problems that the FHSAA had, and one of the reasons why this was the third meeting to try to figure out when to start high school fall sports, was because the state is so diverse and schools, up in Panama City aren't going through what schools in Fort Lauderdale are going through. So what they decided to do, Carlos Ochoa, he's actually an athletic director from a Miami high school. He proposed that you could start on the 24th if you could. If you couldn't, you could delay and kind of start whenever you could. And that's what we're seeing. So August 24th is the start date if you can. What we're seeing, I'm based out of Tallahassee, so what we're seeing up here is that a lot of the rural schools that their cases aren't as high, they're going to start on the 24th. But Leon County, they're going to push it back until September 11th. That's when they'll start practice dates. Some of the Miami schools, from articles that I've read, don't even know when they're going to start. So what that proposal did was say, hey, if you can start now, start now. Get your games in. If you can play. Hopefully you get as many games in as you can before, this thing might blow up once school starts. We don't know what the cases are going to do. So that's what the proposal did. It gave the flexibility to each individual school district. And that's something that the FHSAA kind of runs by. They like to make it a district by district decision. They didn't want to take that power out of the districts. And that's what this proposal did. If you can start, you start. If you can't, you wait until it's safe for your individual district to start playing.
So having said that, how in the world are they going to have a state series, play for state championships? Is that out?
Yeah, that was the big sticking point. That's what a lot of the board members, so the vote was 11-5. 11 board members voted to accept that proposal. 5 didn't. And that was the 5 that didn't. That was their argument. It's not equitable. We can't have a true state champion if you don't allow South Florida schools to participate. And more than likely, South Florida schools are not going to start on that August 24th start date. So what's going to happen is you can start fall sports on the 24th. Games can start September the 4th if you can. you have until September the 18th to opt out of the state series. So if you can play in that state series, they'll have a state series. Obviously, districts and regions are not going to remain the same, because if you have 50 teams in a region, or not in a region, in a classification, and only 20 of those are playing, things are going to have to be reworked a little bit. They're going to reclassify, they're going to redistrict. So, districts and regions and playoffs are not going to look the same as they have in the past. Now, what this allows districts to do, so say none of these Miami schools will be able to start, more than likely. Probably none of them will be able to participate in that state series. They can create kind of their own state championship down in South Florida. So this year is not going to be, I guess, a true state championship year. And that's something that Executive Director George Tomlin did say. We asked him, we're like, look, what's the deal with this year? And he said this year is always going to have kind of an asterisk by it. It's not going to be a true, so to speak, state championship, because again, if you have 50 teams in Class 5A and only 20 of them are eligible to participate, it's not going to be a true state championship. And I mean, it is what it is. It stinks, but we're in a pandemic. You got to do what you got to do, and they wanted to make sure that if you could play, you at least get some games in.
Absolutely. We're speaking with Alison Posey on the Titan More Hotline. You can follow her on Twitter at Alison Posey 14. She's the sports director at WTXL in Tallahassee. So basically, correct me if I'm wrong, high school coaches are basically scrambling since Friday, trying to put a schedule together. Because, as you mentioned, in Leon County, those schools, public schools, are not allowed to leave the county to play games. So is it just going to be kind of a round robin of all the public schools in Tallahassee area? Yeah,
so that's what Tallahassee decided to do. So Tallahassee, I tell everybody, Leon County is kind of the anomaly up here. So we cover teams from Gadsden County all the way to Suwannee County. So we're that true Big Bend area of Florida is our coverage area. All of the rural counties are going to start on the 24th. In Leon County, they wanted to have 2 weeks of school to see if the data reflected that kids returning to school, if that caused a spike in cases. So Leon County is going to start practices on September the 11th. They're taking advantage of that flexibility that I talked about. Their games will start September 25th. So they are going to do a county-only schedule. So that's for football, for volleyball, for golf, for cross country. They will only be allowed to play Leon County schools. So they'll have the opportunity for 7 games. So there's 5 public high schools in Leon County. They'll all play each other. It's going to be very interesting. It's going to be a little bit weird. But from the coaches that I've spoken with, they want to get film for these kids. And whether they're playing, if Leon has to play Lincoln twice, they'll just play them twice. They'll get film for these kids. These kids will have an opportunity to play in games, to kind of create that inter-city rivalry that they have. And again, it's not ideal by any means, but it's football, it's volleyball, it's these sports that these kids want to play. Yeah, and so I guess my question is, obviously Lincoln and Leon are the two, 7A schools up there, I believe. And I think Godby's 5 or 6. 5A, yeah.
And I'm not familiar with the smaller schools. So are you trying to tell me like a 2A or 3A school is going to have to play one of these 7A schools? So the public schools aren't going to be as affected. They're all, Rickards and Godby are in the same classification. Leon and Lincoln and Childs are actually in the same classification. So 3 of the 5 and 2 of the 5 are in the same classification. So they'll be fine. Leon County's non-public schools, so your Florida High, your North Florida Christian, St. John Paul II, Maclay, and FAMU DRS, they don't have to follow that. So they can play whoever they want because they're not in that Leon County public school system. So again, a little bit weird. They can play whoever they want. What's kind of interesting is that it won't necessarily affect football, but in volleyball, say if Maclay wanted to play Childs, they can still do that. Even though Maclay can leave the area and Childs can't, because they're Leon County, they're going to let them play each other. So Maclay's not going to play Lincoln in football, but you might see, I think it was Lincoln who had, who did they have on their schedule? I think they had Florida High. Florida High's a little bit bigger classification that, they were state runner-up last year in 3A. They will probably play.
And again, those schedules have not been ironed out yet, but I could see them playing on one of those Leon County public schools.
We got a Facebook Live comment here brought to you by Meldon Law, where you matter most. Jeff says, if I'm not mistaken, South Florida high schools won 7 of the 8 state championships last year.
They sure did. They did. The only team that did not was in Class 1A, that 1A rural division. It was Madison County. Madison County was the only team, which again is in our coverage area. They were the only non-South Florida school to win a state championship last year. And that's one of the arguments that one of the board members brought up on Friday about it being equitable. How can you have a state championship series if South Florida schools can't even be in it? And that's what I'm saying. This year is not going to be ideal. They'll be a star by it forever, but it is what it is. I mean, again, these coaches want to give these kids that can play the opportunity to play. And if we wait for South Florida, that we might not ever play. So that was kind of the driving home point that they voted on Friday.
So Alison, with all this nonsense going on, did you hear a lot of parents with kind of the same responses as some of these Big Ten parents now, writing letters to the Big Ten commissioner or to the presidents to let their kids play? Is that the feeling that you got among most of the high school parents?
It's funny you mentioned that, because on Friday there was a petition that was circulating last week. It was started by 2 parents at Cambridge Christian, which is in the Tampa area, if I'm not mistaken. It was a Let Us Play petition. 40,000 signatures in less than a week it generated. So to answer your question, yeah, I think that's the general consensus, is that these parents want these kids to play. And from my experience, there's parents that have concerns, of course, but for the most part, they want the kids to play, and not just to play because they want to see football on Friday night. They want these kids to have an opportunity at a college scholarship. They want these kids to have an opportunity to excel in school. A lot of kids use football, or any sport, as their motivation to go to school. It keeps them out of trouble. It gives them something to do. It's good for mental health. I mean, it's not just suiting up on Friday nights. All the coaches that I talk to really stress that it's so much more than what goes on in between the sidelines on Friday. It's a lot bigger than just football. And, for the coaches that want to play and for the kids that want to play, I'm really happy that this decision went their way on Friday.
We got another Facebook Live comment here brought to you by Meldon Law, where you matter most. And I'm going to read it. I'm not sure here, but John says, Alison, I have not forgot about those wings from your Panama City days.
So on Friday night, our high school football show, we were sponsored by Beef O'Brady's. And I don't know if you've ever been involved with high school football on Friday night. It is a grind, and you don't eat dinner, and you are nonstop for 5 hours. So by the time that show hit on Friday night, we were eating wings live on set. So
that's good.
Thanks for remembering that.
So Alison, now that we've talked high school sports, let's talk about you. You're Gator grad from the journalism school. You worked with Steve Russell. You played junior college softball, came back to the University of Florida. I want to say you played club softball here at UF, right? Won some kind of World Series title.
Yep, national title.
Talk a little bit about that. And did you ever ask Tim Walton if you could have a little tryout?
So, softball was, my life. I went to PK Young, like you said, got an opportunity to play 2 years in junior college, realized that softball was not going to make me money. It's tough to make money in the sport of softball. I had some smaller offers to continue playing, decided to go to UF because sports journalism is what I wanted to do. And why not go to UF? I was in junior college during the glory years of the football and the basketball national title. So I just missed that as a student at UF. I was there for the second football national title, but I got to experience such awesome things at Florida. And I thought about trying to walk on to the softball team, but decided that I wanted to play more, I guess, for fun, and club softball allowed me to do that. You didn't have the 5 a.m. workouts and the 5-hour-long practices, but it was still competitive. Club softball, it's intercollegiate. It's still fast pitch, unlike intramurals, which is slow pitch. A lot of the girls that play went to UF to become a doctor or lawyers and had offers from other schools that they turned down to go to Florida. So club softball was still extremely competitive. And the thing with club softball, there's no eligibility. So one of the girls from Florida State was actually a Division I pitcher at UNF. who went to law school at Florida State. So that's what I'm saying. Still extremely competitive club softball, and we won a national championship in 2010, which is probably one of the highlights of my sports career. It was incredible. I'll never forget it, and it just such awesome memories. And my dad actually got to coach us too, which was even cooler. So I got to share that moment with my dad.
Oh, that is cool. So let's.
Yeah.
A lot of our people, I've had other people that have come out of the journalism school. Just talk about what Steve Russell has meant to your career.
Oh, Steve he's an incredible human being. Being involved with AM 850, I know that journalism department has changed a lot since I was in school. If I'm not mistaken, you can actually study to become a sports broadcaster now, and that was not the case when I was in school. So if you wanted to study to be a sports journalist, I mean, you had to put in the legwork yourself. So that was a lot of time talking with Steve, waking up. I did the 5 a.m. shift at AM 850. I was at the studio at like 4 a.m. And Steve's just a mentor. I mean, he'll tell you how it is. If you're not up to par, he'll let you know. And I owe a lot to my career to Steve. I mean, he helped me become who I am, helped me get some thick skin, and has always given me good advice. If I ever need advice, I give him a yell, and anytime I'm in town, I make sure to stop by UF and go visit him, because he's definitely a big reason of why I am where I am today.
We're speaking with Alison Posey. You can follow her on Twitter at up there in Tallahassee. They got a few days in with spring practice. There's been some issues from some players coming out on Twitter about their COVID testing. Talk a little bit about what's going on up in Tallahassee.
So, Mike Norvell, obviously the new head coach, you mentioned it, 3 days into spring practice. It was their first day in pads when they pulled the plug, when COVID kind of struck up and they had to pull the plug on practice. And it stinks for anybody to lose spring practice, but when you have a new coach who's installing a new system, it stinks even more, because these kids are still trying to feel out the coaching staff. The coaching staff is still trying to feel out these kids. So that's a whole chunk of time that they lost. So this summer, most of the guys have been on campus. They got that extra 2 weeks from the NCAA that Coach Norvell has raved about. He said it was very good for them. The last week with Florida State has been interesting, to say the least. It's the second time in 3 months that a player has gone to Twitter to kind of speak out against the coaching staff. Marvin Wilson was a couple months ago after George Floyd was killed. Marvin went on and said that the way that Coach Norvell said he addressed the team was not the way he addressed the team. So that was the first instance of a player speaking out. And then last week, a couple of the wide receivers, Warren Thompson wrote a letter saying that he felt like his health was in jeopardy and that he was being lied to about players' health. And Florida State has used university policy to not talk about the COVID cases. We don't know confirmed how many guys have been tested, or they've been tested every week, but how many guys have tested positive out of those tests. We don't know how many tests, how many players have come out positive at Florida State. Florida State has not been clear about that with us, and that's fine. That's their right, but that's caused a little bit of confusion. But that was the second instance last week. So it's been an interesting week. Other than that, practice, Norvell's like practice. He said it's gone well. He's been impressed with the quarterbacks, the young guys. Florida State has 2 true freshmen that are really competing with James Blackman, kind of the incumbent at the quarterback position. They've got to figure out running back. Cam Akers left. Kalen Laborn was kicked off the team before practice started. So running back's kind of interesting. Deshaun Corbin, the transfer from A&M, is going to try to fill that role. But yeah, I mean, practice, it's been going. It's been weird. We're not allowed to go to it, obviously, because of the COVID stuff. So we actually haven't seen practice in the flesh. We've talked every day to Coach Norvell and the players on Zoom, which again has been weird. It's a different experience. This whole COVID thing, I'm sure it's definitely weird for the team. It's weird for sports journalists too. It's an odd time.
Yeah. So Mike Norvell, I think he's going to do a good job at Florida State. Time will tell. But, is it just, you don't see a whole lot of other teams where their players come out on Twitter publicly stating these type of things? Is it a culture issue, just a leadership issue from the very, very top at FSU? What is the issue there?
I think it's a little bit of both. So when Willie Taggart inherited this program, the locker room was not good. The culture was not good. Kids were skipping class. There was arguments in the locker room. It was not a good locker room atmosphere when Willie Taggart took over. So the product on the field was not good under Taggart, but he had to change the mindset at Florida State. He had to get these kids kind of back in that mindset, back in that mentality. And he started that, and Coach Norvell has had to finish that because that same group of kids is still here. So I think that's part of it. It's a locker room culture that's still trying to figure itself out and trying to get better. I also think it's guys adjusting to a new coaching staff. Things you might have been able to get by with in the past, you might not be able to get by with now. Coach Norvell is he's very by the book. He wants things done a certain way, and if it's not being done that way, you can leave. So I think a little bit of it is culture, trying to find leaders that emerge. It's kind of interesting you say that too, because Marvin Wilson is considered one of the leaders, and he's one of the ones that spoke out the first time. So I definitely think that it is a leadership thing. It's a locker room. It's this team still trying to find a culture, kind of a mindset. It's a lot of things, mainly to learning and adjusting to this new coaching staff. Because again, they've only known each other 9 months, and most of that time has been spent over Zoom, which is not a good way to get to know a new coaching staff.
Refresh your vehicle and your brand with a vehicle wrap from WrapSpot. August is your lucky month at WrapSpot. Mention promo code Shane and receive 13% off your vehicle wrap. Last thing for you, Allison. Mm-hmm. Living up in Tallahassee, being a Gator, what's the thought about no FSU Florida game this year?
It's weird. It's odd. If you listen to our governor, he's still gung-ho it's going to happen. Yeah. So maybe DeSantis will be right. Maybe we'll get this game after all. But it's odd. It's the first time since 1958, 1957 that this hasn't happened. I mean, it's been every year since 1958. That's crazy when you think about it. It's something everybody looks forward to every Thanksgiving weekend. And as you get closer to the season, you're like, all right, this game's going to happen. And this game's not going to happen this year. Honestly, I hope we're still playing football by that time of the year, because who even knows if we'll still be playing football by that time of the year. But to know that we don't have that game to look forward to, it stinks, and there's no other way to put it. I hate it. I hate it. It's a huge rivalry. It's a big rivalry, and it's not going to happen this year. And I don't like it for the kids either, because I know that's something that the guys look forward to, and it's not there. It's not there, and it's weird.
It may be a good thing for the semis that they're not playing us this year.
I'm not saying anything.
Well, Allison, we appreciate you taking the time to join us. Hopefully we'll get a high school football season in and volleyball season in as well. Be safe up there, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
That's Alison Posey. You can check her out on Twitter at Alison Posey 14. We're going to take our first time out of the program here, folks. At Center State Bank, we put business first. We're the largest community bank in the state of Florida and understand that small businesses need a community business partner that they can rely on. Center State has 5 convenient Alachua County locations to serve you better. Center State Bank, member FDIC. Take the first time out. Come back. We'll be joined by Gator great Chris Doering. You're watching and listening to Pod Up with Matthews in the Morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios. We'll be right back.
Hey Gators, this is Coach Steve Spurrier. Pod Up with Matthews in the Morning. We'll be right back after this commercial break.
We want to take this moment to thank all our sponsors who keep the show going and pay the bills. Our gridiron sponsors are Crime Prevention Security Systems, large enough to serve you, small enough to care. Titan MRI, Gainesville's only locally owned and operated MRI facility. Area Rug Masters, your number one choice in Gainesville for all your area rug cleaning services. Meldon Law, where you matter most. Peachland Dental, Gator Nation's first choice for dentistry in Port Charlotte. Our touchdown sponsors are Campus USA Credit Union, Celebration Point Town Center, The Digital Mortgage Guy, Adams Ribs, Gator Dominoes, Celebrate Primary Care, Center State Bank, Gator Bait Media, Davis Gainesville Chevrolet, Miapa Latin Cafe, Gators Dockside, Okido America Martial Arts and After School, Doreen Wiebe Realtor, Caldwell Banker MM Parish, Radware, Style Cuts, WrapSpot, Ironwood Golf Course, TB Financial, Chris Doering Mortgage, Meadowbrook Golf Course, Darshakau Insurance, Pomodoro Cafe, MB Listings, Big Mills Cheesesteaks, Cornerstone Financial Group, McDonald's of Gainesville, My IT Master, 84 Lumber, and Gainesville Neon and Signs. If you are interested in promoting your business on the show, you can visit our website, potupwithshane.com, and click the advertise button or call Freddie at 352-284-3733. Again, thank you for all the great businesses that support the show. Please remember, if you like what we are doing here, thank our sponsors and support the businesses that support us.
Welcome back to this Monday edition of Pot Up with Matthews in the Morning from the Crime Prevention Security System Studios. Large enough to serve you, small enough to care. I want to thank Alison Posey for joining us, talking a little high school sports and FSU. We'll be joined here shortly by Chris Doering. Celebration points where the Gators come to celebrate with premium brands like Bass Pro Shop, Tommy Hilfiger Hotel Indigo, Nike Medici's, Regal Cinemas incoming soon, the HBC's new restaurant, Spurrier's Gridiron Grill, and Visor's Rooftop Bar. We will see you at Celebration Point where the Gators come to celebrate. Like I said, it's a tough day for all us Gators losing Aubrey Hill. Chris and I will talk a little bit about that here when he comes on, recapping what happened over the weekend. Obviously, they're in the NHL playoffs right now. NBA playoffs start today. The NBA bubble's been outstanding if you haven't missed it. In golf, former Gator Billy Horschel loses by one shot yesterday in the Wyndham Championship. Played phenomenal golf, just a few putts here and there. That's what happens. So let's see. We're going to run a video here in just a second. Just talks to you about the kind of person and what Aubrey Hill stood for. He coached at a lot of different colleges: Pitt, Duke, Miami, at Florida. FIU is where he has been coaching. But he went back to his high school, the Carroll City Chiefs, and won a state championship. And we're going to have the producer play that video right now.
When you look back on this season, what's the one thing that stands out to you?
Family. We're etched in history with a lot of great teams, but we stuck together after starting 0-2. And it's the resiliency of our players, our coaches, sticking together as a family. And then obviously we got good players, they make the plays.
We didn't talk about Naquan Wright. He had a big game.
Hey, he's been out a couple weeks. He came back at the right time. State championship game. Those plays that he made helped us win it.
This is the first state championship for Carroll City since 03. This is big because you're a Carroll City alum. How does it feel now? You play as a player, now as a coach.
Well, I can tell you this. It's a whole bunch of chief pride. I had it when I was a player. I got it now as a head coach. We're excited about the win. We're excited about winning the state championship.
Dog tag have any personal significance?
Yes. The dog tag, it says, be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. God is with you.
Oh, yeah.
Right,
congratulations, Coach.
Thank you.
Welcome back. That video right there says a lot about Aubrey Hill. That's the kind of person he was. And it's tough, man. We're going to bring on another former teammate of Aubrey Hill, former Gator great, Chris Doering. Good morning, Chris. How are you?
Hey, I'm good, Shane, man. Good to be on with you again. And I appreciate the timeliness of this because I heard you talking a little bit about Aubrey, man. And like you, we were texting a little bit on Sunday night. Just really kind of took my breath away. And I didn't know about it. I guess you had some previous information about his sickness, but just caught me completely off guard. And for a guy that always full of energy, always full of life, always full of happiness and bringing joy to other people, man, it just was really off out of the blue for me, man.
Yeah, it was rough because, I've been texting with him, I guess, since February, Chris, to try to get him on my show. Mm-hmm. And, Aubrey's kind of a quiet, laid back kind of guy. And he'd respond. He's like, yeah, get back to me. And then finally he told me that he was going through chemo, that he watches the show. He wants to be on it. He said he's starting to feel better. This was probably a month ago. He said, my plan is to get with you at the end of August to come on. And then I got the news yesterday, and, it's just hard to believe. It's I heard that he was in surgery doing a transplant that went bad, and I'm not even sure what kind of cancer. He wouldn't even tell me what kind of cancer he had.
Yeah,
that's the kind of person he is. But there's a saying out there that coaches will impact more people in a year than the average person does in a lifetime, and that was Aubrey Hill.
Yeah.
I don't think you can find one person that says one bad thing about him. He was. You wouldn't say he was a great player here. He was a solid, dependable player. He wasn't the fastest guy in the world. Just very dependable, just did his job.
He may not have been a great player in that category, but he was a great leader. He was our captain in 1994 and a guy that went out, led by example, and was unselfish. I think, that's the thing. You remember Coach Spurrier would always talk about John Woodenisms and love guys that played the way they were coached and guys that were unselfish. And I think that Aubrey was all of those things. And I'll say this, Shane, I think the Florida Gator receiving corps as a whole for a long period of time suffered from him not being able to be retained. When he came on with Will, I thought that receiving corps was absolutely going to take off from there. And then remember, after he had to be let go, there was just a period of time where receiver coach after receiver coach was unable to develop the talent with that position. And I hate that Florida fans didn't get a chance to experience him as a coach for a longer period of time here.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. And, we played a video before you came on of him after they won the state title. I think after he left Florida, he went back to Carroll City, his alma mater, and they won a state championship. And it's a sad, sad day.
Let me say this. I'm sorry. Before you move on, I want to make sure I come back to something. Go ahead. I apologize.
Well, I saw some bits and pieces the other day. I think I can't remember who put it on Twitter, but it was y'all's 9 double pass against Alabama that you threw to Aubrey down the 1 yard line.
Yeah. That was. I was actually looking through some stuff on Twitter last night and on social medias and stuff, and I remember they were. A lot of people posting about that and stuff. And so that was probably the most memorable thing play that we had together. But I'll tell you off the field, Shane, and this is what I wanted to mention. I've been talking about this a lot with all the racial injustice stuff. And, all of that stuff doesn't apply to guys on teams and apply to guys in locker rooms. And I thank Aubrey for a lot of that, because my freshman year, your senior year, I roomed with Aubrey on the road when we stay in the hotel the night before games, and we would lay it in bed at night and just talk about the differences. Him, as you mentioned, from Carroll City, inner city Miami, me from here, more suburban Gainesville, totally different backgrounds, but yet we were able to talk about our life experiences and share, what it was like for each of us. And Aubrey would come eat dinner with my parents some on Sunday nights at their house, and just a great way to be exposed to other cultures and other upbringings. And I'm so thankful for all the things that Aubrey shared with me about his life that helped me better understand, guys like him that were from different parts of the world from me, seemingly, and that exposure has benefited me greatly throughout my life.
Yeah, I texted late in the night with Lamar Thomas, former Miami guy who was college coach for a long time, and even though Lamar was older than Aubrey, he said Aubrey was his mentor, in the coaching business. And it's tough for anybody that knew Aubrey Hill knew what kind of person he was. It's hard to believe at age 48. Well, Chris, let's talk a little bit about what's going on in college football. First, let's start with the Big Ten. Okay, now they got all these parents writing these letters to the league, to the commissioner, and I salute them, because I have a kid playing. He's on a team. He ain't actually playing in games, but this is a small window of opportunity for these athletes in their lifetime. It gives them an opportunity to maybe do it professionally, gives them opportunity just to do it for a great experience. What are your thoughts on what the parents are doing? Would Chris Doering be doing that if you were a parent of a Big Ten player?
There's no question about it. The sport of football in general in recent years has been attacked. And as dangerous as the sport is, I still would go back and play it again. I have my son playing in high school right now because of all the benefits that come from playing the sport in general, and especially at the college level. We're just sitting here talking about Aubrey and the impact that he had on our lives. Like, those are relationships that we wouldn't otherwise have. And you don't have those types of close relationships unless you're going through strain together, man. Coming in as freshmen with guys and working through 4 or 5 years of college and the 615 workouts and all of the other stuff that we do that people don't see. That's where character is built. That's where, that's why I think I've been able to have success in other parts of my life, because of what I learned playing football and the teamwork and the goal setting and the perseverance from disappointments and coming back. Like, there's no sport in the world that has that same sort of dynamic. And so I hate that these kids are potentially, the Big Ten, as of now, Pac-12, missing out on one of those years. And remember, Shane, I would always talk about, like, man, I remember being like a freshman or a sophomore, and older guys would come back after they were done and they'd tell you, man, enjoy it while you can because it goes by so quick. And you're like, oh, man, shut the hell up. This is going to last forever. And then all of a sudden it's gone. And so this limited period of time now is even shorter for kids in the Big Ten and the Pac-12, which is disappointing.
I agree 100% with that because, as you mentioned, your son's playing high school ball.
Yeah.
Luke got his first year in last year, got to experience going to a big bowl game, Orange Bowl. These are experiences you'll never have back. And I just can't imagine these kids losing any years because there's just so much opportunity for them. And, I want to ask you with the Big Ten, you and I have texted about it, and I really believe it's not Kevin Warren's comments because it wasn't his decision. It was the presidents of the Big Ten that canceled the season. Because what a lot of people haven't mentioned, and I did see where Clay Travis, a national guy, came out and talked about it yesterday on Twitter, that Kevin Warren's son is a player at Mississippi State University.
Yeah.
So if the doctors in the Big Ten have all this great information where it's not safe for you to play, wouldn't you be immediately calling your son and say, son, you are opting out. You are not going to play football this year. It blows my mind.
It is kind of crazy to think about that dynamic and to think about the timeliness of that decision from the Big Ten and the Pac-12. Like, what was the sense of urgency at that point? I mean, it's the same thing with what happened with the schedule, with them announcing they were going to go Big Ten only. Like, why did they have to announce those things when they did? And I really think the biggest failure amongst all of this, Shane, is the lack of cooperation, coordination, and communication amongst the Power 5 conferences. I think there's a lack of leadership. Mark Emmert talked last week about, kind of almost making fun of this idea that there needs to be a college football czar and how czars are viewed as bad people in his history. Well, I honestly believe, and I hate to say this because I value him so much as a leader in our conference, but I think Greg Sankey would be a tremendous person to kind of coordinate college football as a whole. His leadership, what he's shown during this entire time, not to mention, throughout his tenure as the commissioner of this conference, he's strong, he's yet patient, he's got compassion, he's highly intelligent. And I think everybody's kind of looking at what the SEC is doing right now. And I think that's why the Big 12 decided to continue on. They hitched their wagon to the most intelligent guy that's still left standing, and that's Greg Sankey.
Yeah, and mention the SEC. I know for a fact those guys on the team are in the safest environment they possibly can be in right now.
Look at Oklahoma. Oklahoma went home, Shane, and they had 9 guys test positive. Right. You're exactly right about that.
Yeah, because they're going to be tested multiple times each week. And the great thing about it is the SEC, if I'm not mistaken, has hired an outside firm that is responsible for all the testing. So, there's a lot of people out there that like if Chris Doering, or let's just use Kyle Trask as an example. Kyle Trask tests positive, that some coaches are going to be like, that's okay, we're going to let you play.
Yeah.
Well, there's an outside source that I've been told that's going to be doing these testing. So there's not going to be any of that. But my point is, when we play Texas A&M, when we play South Carolina, those guys on that field are going to be so safe because they've all been tested 2 or 3 times that prior week.
Yeah. Not to mention, I don't know if you saw over the weekend, but the FDA approved the saliva direct test. I think that's a game changer as well. And another reason why the Big Ten and Pac-12, in my opinion, were premature. Like, what's it hurt you to let things kind of transpire to see what sort of advances in technology we get? This could be a game changer with the cost effectiveness. I think it's supposed to be between $10 and $20 to test. It's immediate. You can get it done within a matter of a couple hours at any lab. And all of these schools in the SEC have the labs that are going to be necessary to process this. So I think this is huge for feeling even more safe, the ability to test every single day if you wanted to. And to your point, you have everybody in the conference under the same protocols, going through the same exact care. And I know your son Luke is there and it has been under the care of those medical professionals. Like, I wouldn't want my kids anywhere else if they were having to go through something like this potentially.
The deal is up and it is good. It's Campus USA and Davis Chevrolet's biggest sale of the year. Put you in a new car between August 20th and August 23rd, the lowest interest rates of the year. A free $100 gift card and no payments for 90 days. Valid all week at Davis Chevrolet. We're speaking with Chris Doering on the Titan Tomorrow Hotline. So, Chris, you know, it's been all over Twitter. Parties in Tuscaloosa, I don't know if they're frat parties, wherever they're all these students, you know, at some establishment. People making a big deal about it. No mask. I get it. But as long as there's no athletes there, who cares, right? Because, you know, I don't think they're going to allow fans in the stands anyway.
No. I find it hard to believe that they're going to. You know, we had Ray Tanner on our show the other day, the athletic director at South Carolina, and he was talking about their plan to have 25% capacity in Williams-Brice Stadium. That sounds great at the time. I don't necessarily know if that's going to be able to come to fruition or not. But I do think, to your point, like, I want to make sure that we congratulate these athletes for the job that they've done. When everybody got back onto campus in June, numbers were through the roof at LSU, at Alabama, at Clemson, across the South. You know, 37, 38 guys on a team testing positive. Well, those numbers have been mitigated considerably or completely eliminated at a lot of schools. And that shows me that the testing protocols are working well, but more so the players are taking personal responsibility for their part in letting a football season take place this year. Guys are staying away from the public, the bars a little bit more. And I love their willingness to sacrifice. Lorenzo Lingard recently said a couple weeks ago, hey, I'll go in a bubble. And I think that's what you're seeing is a lot of these schools creating bubbles around their teams themselves. And I know you and I texted about it a little bit. I think this idea of having athletes take online classes only is the best thing you could possibly do to prevent integration with the rest of the student population.
Absolutely. So, Chris, let's just say, well, what would you recommend to a kid at, let's say, Ohio State, Michigan, their dreams of playing college football or maybe going to the NFL? Now, the Justin Fields, we know he's going to be a first-round draft pick when he decides to come out.
Hey, but yet, though, think about this, though. Justin Fields and Trevor Lawrence, they're the last two guys that need to play college football this year.
Exactly.
And yet they've been the most vocal in showing leadership for having a season take place.
And the reason, because, as you said, they're great leaders. They love to compete, but they understand what it's like for their teammates.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they could be very selfish and say, I'm done.
Yeah.
I am going pro. See you boys later. But that's what's great about being part of a team.
Mm-hmm.
And they want to try to compete, win a Big Ten championship, ACC championship, maybe a national title with their guys, because that's something you'll remember the rest of your life. If you were one of those players in the Big Ten, would you transfer out? What would you do right now, I guess is what I'm asking, because, because there's so many of those guys that are, think about Joe Burrow. If this season it was canceled last year, Joe Burrow had like a 5th or 6th round grade.
Yeah.
He ended up being the first pick, and it was like a $30 million guaranteed deal he got.
Mm-hmm.
Changed his life.
Yeah. Yeah, I could say for myself, I mean, not to those extremes, but if I didn't have my senior year, I wouldn't have had an opportunity to get drafted or to play in the NFL. And so, every year matters. Every opportunity you get matters. Like, I was a guy that never wanted to miss a rep in practice for a chance of somebody taking your job, much let alone an entire season. So I think the problem, Shane, that I see right now, though, is that there's so much uncertainty. Like, what if you do transfer to the Big 12 or the SEC or the ACC? One, it's late in the game. It's very hard to kind of get in and get some traction. Two, who knows if there's actually going to be a season? So you might transfer and find yourself in a situation where everybody else cancels, and now all of a sudden you got people coming back for an extra year. You got an incoming freshman class. The numbers are going to be through the roof. Are you going to get the same opportunity you had at the school you were at before? Again, we go back to what we said earlier. I just feel so terribly for these kids and all the dynamics that are kind of playing out as a result of the pandemic.
At Chris Doering Mortgage, they do mortgage lending right, helping home buyers throughout Gainesville and North Central Florida. Call Chris Doering Mortgage today at 352-244-0840, or you can ask him right now on Facebook.
That's right. That was a timely live read, man. I appreciate the enthusiasm, too.
That's right. So let's talk about the SEC. The schedule, the dates, who you're playing, all comes out today.
Yeah.
First of all, what were your thoughts? We haven't spoken with you since the 2 additional games were added. Poor Missouri and poor Arkansas. Arkansas might have the hardest schedule I've ever seen in the history of college football.
I think they do. I mean, the idea was there was not necessarily a set formula. The SEC was trying to look at the existing schedule and look at the overall totality. It wasn't about adding the 2 opponents. It was the totality of everything. And I'll be honest, I did that show with Dari that night as we revealed the 2 additional games. And I didn't really know at the time. You get the teams, you're trying to look, and figure everything out. And I didn't realize just how hard Arkansas' schedule was at that point in time. I mean, Dari and I got blistered on Twitter for not acknowledging that. And I'll say, all right, already being in the SEC West and adding Georgia and Florida there, it is going to be a tremendous challenge. As you know, Shane, we played 8 SEC games, and it seemed like a grind. Now you're playing 10 in a limited amount of time, and with really no reprieve. I don't know about you, I was never really a bye week guy. I hated the idea of getting off the rhythm that you're in. But I think this year, having the 2 weeks to give some flexibility and playing a 10-game conference-only schedule, these bye weeks are going to be huge for these teams. That's why tonight's so important, finding out where these teams kind of line up with their schedules. I think even on our normal schedules, there's always a 3-week run that are going to define your season. Now I think it could be a 4 or 5 week run that ends up challenging some of these teams this year.
Jim has a text for you on the Titan MR text line. He says, is this the year we beat Georgia? Please tell me this is the year we beat them.
I think this is the year that everybody's been pointing to. I mean, the dynamics of everything that exists this year. I think the things that you have to have when you're dealing with the kind of dynamic that we've dealt with this year, no spring practice, very limited time together in the offseason. What you're looking for is experience and leadership on the field and continuity on the coaching staff. Florida has both of those things, and conversely, Georgia has just the opposite. A lot of turnover on the coaching staff. You lose Sam Pittman, who was huge to that offensive line and that team in general. The offensive line was decimated on the field. You lose your quarterback, still undetermined as to who the real receivers are going to be behind George Pickens. I have a lot of questions about that offense as a whole. And it's got to be insulting to you, Shane. I imagine having played the position in this conference, in the preseason, I think that the shortest odds in the SEC to win the Heisman Trophy was a guy that hadn't even played a snap in the SEC yet. Jamie Newman was thought to be the most likely guy to win the Heisman Trophy and never played a down in this conference before. To me, it's almost like what we talked about with Kerry Blackshear in basketball last year, this idea that you have a guy that comes in and is going to be – he was voted the SEC preseason player of the year. I think that was completely setting the bar too high for Kerry Blackshear, and I think it's a very unrealistic expectation both for him and for Jamie Newman this season.
Chris, yeah, I agree with that. I want to ask you this, because a lot of people have always been talking about these super conferences we need to have in college football, and we may be getting there now. But, you and I you were a walk-on, earned a scholarship, had a tremendous career. I had to work my way up. But there's so many kids that you've trained and worked with and that had those opportunities in high school to go play at Troy, play at Valdosta State, Georgia Southern. If we don't, nobody wants the cupcake games anymore because they say it's boring. But for those kids, it's a great opportunity for them to go to college for free, get an education, but they get the opportunity to come to the Swamp. The kids at South Alabama are going to miss out on that opportunity to play a big SEC team in the Swamp, but they're also going to miss out for the payday.
Yeah.
Do you think these type of schools are going to survive?
I don't know. I think it's already an interesting dynamic. I think the pandemic has shown just what a tenuous position all of these athletic departments are in with some of the mismanagement of funds and how they're kind of piecing things together. But I'll say this, Shane, I back before I was doing studio stuff, I was doing games for the SEC network, and we did an Alabama UT Chattanooga game towards the end of the season. And it's not one that a lot of people probably paid much attention to. But on Friday, I went out to their walkthrough at Bryant-Denny Stadium. These guys are all out there taking pictures together. They're videoing. Like, this is a huge experience for them. And while it wasn't a competitive game, these were memories that these kids were going to have for the rest of their lives. And so I do hate that it is a situation where that could potentially go away for them. At the same time, I think the fans have been completely cheated by having to people paying season tickets to pay for a game like that is a bit of a money grab, in my opinion. So I do think there's going to be things from this pandemic, the scheduling. How are we going to go back to only 8 SEC games after playing 10 this year? Like, how exciting that's going to be. I think it's going to be tough to go back. I think this would have been a great year to have an expanded playoff had the Big Ten and Pac-12 continued to play. So I think that's something we'll continue to discuss. But I like the idea, Shane, how's spring football going to work potentially for the MAC? I mean, if they might have their own opportunity to be hugely visible, those group of 5 schools in the spring, right, that might create some revenue, a TV deal. People have a thirst for football in the offseason. And as far as the FCS teams go, I think a great idea would be to have them, instead of this orange and blue game, instead of spring games the way we've done it before, let's bring an FCS opponent in, have a spring game where we can put it on TV, where we can charge actually admission. People would come that time of year. They would be able to get, $500,000, $750,000 maybe to pay those schools to help their budgets be able to run. I think that might be a great way to kind of mesh together what we've been doing with something that's a little bit more advanced looking.
Yep. So Doering, were you a Dr. J fan?
You know what? Hey, you know what? I think you might have been there, Shane. That was from Chris DeMarco's golf tournament a couple years ago at the live auction. They do such a good job with all of it. I got caught up in the bidding, ended up buying it, and it wasn't in that frame that you see behind me, man. And at the end of the night, I think I had a few beers and I was wearing that jersey around the rest of the night. So, yeah, I wasn't a huge Dr. J fan, but I was a fan of buying it in that moment.
As much as you paid for it, you had to get it framed, right?
I did have to go get it framed, or else I'd probably in jeopardy.
He got the head ball coach's his up-to-date jersey. You need to get one of his old school jerseys.
I know. I got that jersey, and actually that's one of the special things. I got him to sign it for me, and very nice inscription that he put on there. So that means a lot to me. So much I haven't got it hung up yet, but I think visually it's been good for the television shows from home here this last few months.
It looks great on Zoom. All right, Chris. Hey, man, appreciate you taking the time, my man. Look forward to seeing the schedule come out tonight. Be safe, and we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, let's talk soon, man. Appreciate the work you do, Shane. See you, buddy.
All right, Chris Doering, join us on the Titan MR hotline. You can check him out on Twitter at Chris Doering, and does a tremendous job on the SEC network with Chiswick and the boys. I want to read a couple. We got some good mornings here from Rob and Kyle. We appreciate you joining the show. I'm a little flustered still because Aubrey's passing. Tomorrow's show, we're going to have my former teammate, former roommate, my man Kyle Morris is going to join us along with Buddy Martin. So let's see what's happening this day in sports, which is brought to you by the Best Restoration. Fires, hurricanes, or leaking pipes, whatever causes havoc in your home or business, call the Best at the Best Restoration, 352-353-0768. This day in sports, let me pull it up here. This day in sports back in, well, let's see if I can find it here. Here it is. In 1997, the PGA Championship at Wingfoot Golf Club, Davis Love III wins his only major title by 5 strokes over Justin Leonard. That's This Day in Sports, which is brought to you by the Best Restoration. Again, folks, just want our thoughts and prayers go out to Aubrey Hill, his wife, his kids, his entire family. Rough night last night for a lot of his teammates. You couldn't ask for a better teammate and a better Gator, a guy that loved the Florida Gators, and we will definitely miss number 82. Tremendous college coach, high school coach, impacted so many players' lives, not only just the players, but the other coaches that he worked with. So rest in peace to number 82, Aubrey Hill. And today's show is going to be a wrap, brought to you by Wrap Spot. Take care out there, folks. We'll see you tomorrow.